Hello, this is Chef Semen Öner from Turkey. I know your favorite Turkish dessert is baklava, so I decided to give you a quite quick recipe of how you could do baklava at home. The ingredients that we'll be needing is some water. It's about 3 to 4 cups of water, and 3 to 4 cups of sugar, and the juice of half a lemon. For the rest of the recipe, we need 1 pack, that is of 25 leaves of phyllo dough, 250 grams of walnuts, and 300 grams of butter. So let's get started. First things first, we need to start by doing the sherbet, the syrup. I start heating it up, and I put 3 cups of water. 1, that's 2, and that's 3. And depending on how sweet you like it, you could put in either 3 cups or 4 cups of sugar. That is normal white sugar. I don't like it that very sweet, so I'm going to put in 3 cups of sugar. So that's about it, approximately. I just wanted to show you really how much I put in, because it's 3 cups of sugar. And you keep it boiling for around 25 to 30 minutes. In the last minute, just before we take it off the heat, we'll pour in some lemon juice. So off you go. This needs to keep cooking. Now this is a pack of phyllo dough that we can find in any supermarket here in Turkey. But during my visits to all abroad, I can say, to almost any European city that I've been to, I have seen Turkish supermarkets that do sell Turkish food, Turkish ingredients. So in all of those shops, you'll be able to find this phyllo dough. And also in any Greek shop, you can find this phyllo dough. Now the pack I'm using, as I said, includes 25 layers. The number of layers is important. It just defines how thick your baklava is going to be. So you can make it with 50 layers if you want to. So the one that we'll be doing is going to be 50 layers. I also keep an eye on what's going on here. I'll just give it a stir. Now let's get back to work. With the melted butter, I'm brushing the bottom of my baking sheet. It will not stick. This is not for stickiness. This is for delight. Now I'm taking 1 layer of the phyllo dough. As you can see, the phyllo dough is very, very thin, and it's a very fragile dough, and it breaks down very easily. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're going to have 50 layers, it really does not matter. So I'm putting 1 layer folded into 2. So this means I already have 2 layers over here. And I'm brushing it again with butter. The more butter you have, the tasty it's going to be. I know it looks too much. You can skip like 1/3 of the butter if you want, but I can assure you that it's not going to be as tasty as the ones you had back here. Of course, I'm talking to those of you who have been to Turkey. The best baklava in Turkey, in my personal opinion, is done in Gaziantep. Gaziantep is a very fine, very nice city. Now, I'm folding it into 2. You can do it 1 by 1 as well if you want. If you have a larger baking sheet, you can put 1 layer of the dough and brush it with butter again. It doesn't matter. I'm putting on this next one, and I'm again brushing it with a generous amount of butter. So this goes on and on like this until you come to half of the package, which means you take 12 layers and it makes around 25 layers of baklava in your baking sheet. I want to show you how you can understand if a sherbet, if the syrup is done. Now it's the beginning of the boiling session, of the boiling process of the syrup. So when I pour it off, you can see that it's in small pieces. When I'm finished, at the end of the half an hour of boiling, it's going to go down like a piece of string. It's not going to break into pieces like this. And I'll show it to you again. As you can see, the syrup is still in fine drops, so it still needs to keep boiling. While it was boiling, I came to the point that I need to put in the walnuts. Now I have 250 grams of walnuts, chopped walnuts here. My preference is that you don't chop them very finely. I prefer that you have some thick, larger pieces. If you chop it down to the bottom, that it becomes like a powder, then it dissolves in the dessert. So I personally prefer to have some big chunks like this. I put in all the walnuts just to make you remember that this is half of the phyllo dough, half of the numbers of the phyllo dough that we have. We had 25 layers and we folded them into two, so it was going to become 50 layers. So I'm just in the middle of that. I'm putting in walnuts now, but if you want, according to your preference, you can put in pistachio, you can put in nuts as well. And I'm making it even so that when it's cut, it's gonna look perfectly fine. Another addition to the recipe, if you want, if you like it, you could put in just a tiny bit of cinnamon, grounded cinnamon. Just a very small tiny bit of grounded cinnamon would smell nicer. Now I'm keeping on putting the phyllo dough on top of one another, just as I was doing again. I'm going to butter it just as I did before. And if you have too much extra pieces here or anywhere in your baking tray, you could cut them or you could fold them in if it's not too much. Mine is not very much. The way I do it, I fold this part on this side, and on the next layer I fold in the other part, so it's going to look even at the end when I get finished. So I keep on buttering generously, and this is going to go on and on and on until I get done till the last layer of phyllo dough I have. Now I've come to the last layer. I again fold it into two. I'm putting it on, but since this is the last layer, that's the one that's on top, I want it to look nicer, so I'm cutting off the extra edge that does not fit in my baking pan. And if you have a larger baking pan, you could use the layers without folding, of course. And I butter it generously again. In fact, all of the butter that I have left. Now making the baklava is done. We have just one more step to go. Now I need it to set for about like 5 to 10 minutes. I want the phyllo dough to absorb the butter that I put on and just to set a little bit. Meanwhile, I'm checking on the syrup. As you can see, it is done now because it's not in very fine drops. It falls off like a string. Now I put the heat off and I put in a few drops of lemon juice. Just like 3 to 5 drops. That's it. This is going to stop it, prevent it from crystallizing. Now, one important thing about desserts with sherbet is that you need your dessert to be crisp. Things like baklava or kadayıf, they need to be crisp. So the way to make it crisp is that immediately you take the baklava out of the oven, you need to pour over the sherbet that's at room temperature. If the dessert and the sherbet are both very hot, boiling, if you pour it over the baklava while it's boiling, it will make the baklava mushy, and we don't want that. To make it crisp, the baklava has to be very hot right out of the oven, and the sherbet has to be cooled down to room temperature. Now let me explain to you what I'm doing. I'm cutting off the pieces of the baklava that we're going to be deliciously eating at the end. You need to cut it down before you put it into the oven. We make it generally in horizontal lines like this, but if you like, you could cut it into squares too. One small secret. The phyllo dough, as I said, is a very delicate and fine kind of dough. So when you cut it off, it breaks. So if you want it to be cut off easily, another trick could be that you could heat up a little bit more butter, and while it's still hot, you could pour it over. How many grams I'm talking about? It's like about 50 grams would be enough. So when you pour it over, this is what I've done, and you can see the difference. When you pour it over while it's hot, it sticks the dough together, but when it's cooked, it's gonna become fluffy again. So see how easier it becomes to cut. It doesn't break down. Now my baklava is ready at last. I've heated my oven up to 175 degrees. I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to put it about 45 minutes, but always keep an eye on it. So it's a fragile thing. It's always a better idea to keep an eye on. Goodbye. Now the time has come. It's been exactly 45 minutes that the baklava has been in the oven, and I'm taking it out. Ooh. Hot, hot, hot. And it looks perfect. Now we don't have time to wait. We immediately pour over the sherbet, the syrup, and you will be able to hear it. It's sizzling. That's it. And now I'm gonna leave it to rest, to cool down, and it's gonna take around 1 to 2 hours. Just before you take the baklava out, just make sure that you go through each and every line so that you're sure it's cut properly. And I'm ready to eat. Ta-da! Here it is. A perfect Turkish baklava that you can do at home anytime you like with simple ingredients. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't eat too much, it's too many calories, and enjoy. Thank you.